1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
One more time.
3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1.
2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1.
Perfect.
I can tell we're gonna have. He's gonna be feisty.
No, come on, man.
That's good. That's
We're
good.
gonna have a
We
good
like
time
it.
today.
We like it.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Welcome to the Cost of Goods Told podcast. My name's Connor. I'm a chef and media producer. I am joined, as always, by my co-producer, Darren Lafferty,
Hey.
veteran in the food service industry.
This never sounds right, but I appreciate it.
Hey, we'll find a title in season 2 or something, right? We are joined by Chef Austin Simmons. I will say something ahead of time real quick so people know everything that you've kind of got your hands on. So our listeners know he's the executive chef of TRIS, executive chef of The Kitchen. He also does an 8-course tasting dinner called Curate, and also the collaboration dinner series Collaborate. This way people know what you have your hands on. So let me just give us a quick schedule real quick. TRIS is open Tuesday through Saturday for lunch, happy hour, and dinner. Curate is Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays for the dinner series. The Kitchen is open Monday through Sunday, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and brunch Saturday and Sunday. The Collaborate series is on Mondays typically at dinner, and then you do special events, the Houston Barbecue Festival, media and promotion of actually other chefs on social media. So if that's not an introduction, I don't know what is, but I mean, tell me if I missed something.
Welcome to the show.
I wash dishes well.
I was gonna say he's also a head diaper changer at his house.
Yeah, head
that's
diaper changer. My wife does most of that. Thank
You're
you,
a lucky
honey.
man. You're a lucky man.
Thank you, honey.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm
Absolutely.
honored to be here.
No, with that type of schedule, thank you so much for taking the time to come on our podcast, man.
Absolutely.
Seriously.
Honored.
There's a lot to get to. Typically in part 1, we like to just do kind of like a background. You can talk about as much as you want or as little as you want, but if you could just kind of get us started in what brought you to cooking.
So I was an absolute train wreck in high school. I liked to party and chase women, and I thought quitting baseball and doing that was my priority freshman year. And in hindsight, I should have played baseball. But so, you know, I started working at 15. I maintained a job, but I liked to party. And by senior year, it caught up with me. I had no direction on really what I wanted to do. I actually mowed and weed eat and edged the baseball and soccer fields that I grew up playing on as I went through high school.
As torture for yourself, like, hey, I quit all this, so I'm gonna cut the grass.
Well, my mom always worked for the city.
Okay.
So it was a city job.
All
it
right.
paid well. And, you know, I like to be outside. And,
Okay, cool.
you know, I put my headset in and get after it. I quit the day they told us we couldn't have earphones.
Really?
Who wants to edge with no earphones? I mean, why would you want to do that?
I mean, you're protecting your ears, right?
Yeah, you are, but
Yeah.
jamming back then it was probably R&B and rap, I think. But you know, so I really had no direction. My dad and my parents are split, and my dad's always been around. My stepmom, and they, you know, what do you want to do? You know, well, we want you to go to school and do something. And I'm not going back to school. I mean, I barely graduated. And then I always liked cooking because of my Meemaw who raised me. She was an in-home daycare babysitter, and she was like cast iron pan, Crisco, and I would sit on the counter and watch her. You know, her daycare center was in the garage.
Now, where is this?
This was in Arlington, Texas.
Okay,
I
all
grew
right.
up
So
in
you're a Southern boy.
I am, and my dad's lived in San Antonio with my stepmom for years.
Okay.
My stepmom's an extremely talented cook, a foodie, if you will. And then my mom worked a couple of jobs while I was young to make sure we stayed in the house we were in. And in between those jobs, I would try to cook when we'd spend time together. I mean, I started riding my bike 3rd grade to school on my own, mornings and afternoons. Well, we lived 4 streets from the elementary. But I think about that now with my daughter. I'm like,
No way, right? You would never
riding
let
her
your
bike
daughter
at
do that.
3rd grade? No way.
Yeah. No way.
So in that time between her day and nighttime job, we would cook something, or I'd try to have meals ready or cook something for her. So I liked to cook. I thought I was decent at cooking, but growing up, it wasn't something I did all the time by any means. I mean, I guess when I smoked enough blunts, I probably cooked a lot of things.
I'm looking at your PR guy behind us here.
Hey, Laura, is that okay for me to say that?
Hey, we got the thumbs up. We're good to go.
So I saw the corn. I loved Emerald Life. Emerald is a real reason, part of the reason why I decided to go to culinary school. and Great Chefs, Great Cities. I don't know if you remember that show or not, but that was on, I think it was early Discovery Channel before it was Discovery. I don't remember what the name of it was. And so I saw the Cordon Bleu. I go visit my dad the next weekend, and I'm like, I want to go to culinary school. And he's like, you want to go where? And I said, culinary school. He goes, you want to cook? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, no, you don't want to cook. And I'm like, no, I really, I want to cook. And my stepmom, of course, loved it. And she said, yeah, I think it's a great idea. And so, of course, my mom supported it. I went to culinary school. I think very few people find what they're good at a young age and then be passionate about it.
Right.
So I believe, in my personal opinion, how you get a professional athlete, you have talent and drive. All right, and those are not the same. And talent, in my opinion, is a God gift. If you don't have the drive to go with it, you're not going to get to the top. But if it's hard to have one or the other, but when you have both, you can get there quickly. And so I found 18 in culinary school. I was a C student in the 6 weeks of classroom. But in the 6 weeks of lab, I was in the top 2%. Well, let me tell you what I have the talent of. I'm ADD.
Okay.
And
so multitasking is right in your wheelhouse.
Multitasking, I'm a smoke show. I mean, I can work I can work 5 or 6 things at one time and not forget any of them. And I'm a visual rememberer, if you will. I mean, I can see something today and then see it again the next day, and it will remind my brain of 4 or 5 things that I needed to remember.
Well, hence why lab was so successful and probably bookwork wasn't so much.
Correct.
Yeah. I can relate to all that you just said.
Correct. So I did so well in labs, and I just loved it. I mean, the reaction you get when you cook somebody an awesome meal, it's real-time feedback. It's emotional. It's praise that you often long when you grow up and you're probably not the model student, right? I was a guy in high school that was a burnout. Now they're all Facebooking me going, man, look at what you've done. And I'm like, yeah, look at what I've done.
Can we come see you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have never thought I'd have done that.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with it, and then I got lucky. And I say I got lucky, some drive. I went through culinary school, still kind of a mess, although liked to cook. The saucier from the mansion on Turtle Creek came to our graduating class. We're in the last lab, and he said, he talked to us about the industry and what it's done for him. He graduated there. And he says, we take some externs. I grew up in Arlington, Texas. I had never heard of the mansion on Turtle Creek. I didn't even know it existed. We were a blue-collar family, right? I mean, it wasn't... Yeah. What is the mansion? Back then, the internet was just starting to be something. Yeah. And so I looked up the mansion, and I went up to him, and I said, I'd love to be an extern. He said, well, come up and try some food. I'm like, man, that's kind of weird. Seems like a pretty nice place. So Friday, I toured to Dallas, drove up. I pulled into the mansion on Turtle Creek. I valeted my car, and I went up to the front desk and I said, through culinary school, I delivered milk for Oak Farm, so I was a vendor.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And they paid me extremely well. So I was making $17.50 an hour, 18 to 19, going to culinary school, delivering milk on an 18-wheeler. I was the rider, and I downstacked milk for Walmart. So we had 3 Walmarts on our route. So I would get up at 3 a.m., deliver milk. I would go to school from 12 to 5 and then do all that over again. And I did that for 15 months. And so, I made a little bit of coin, and I valeted my car. And I went
you valeted on purpose?
No, I didn't know any better, to be honest. In hindsight, I really didn't know any better. So I went into the front desk, and I said, hey, I'm here to apply for an externship in the kitchen. And the lady says, where did you park? And I said, I valet. She says, no, sir, you got to go move your car back through security and go apply through security. The mansion is such a high-profile place. Yeah. Your cooks don't walk to the front door. It's just how that works. And so I went. Another
life lesson learned.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I didn't know there were places that were 5-star, 5-diamond. What did that mean? It wasn't something that I understood. So I went back and talked to the saucier, and he took me around the kitchen, showed me the place, and he's like, we really appreciate you coming, but you have no restaurant experience. This is just really not where you start. And I didn't take no for an answer. So I was pretty down, but my mom lived in Arlington, so it was an excuse to go see her. So I drove back to Austin. Next Friday, drove back. Set through security, didn't tell him I was coming. The executive sous chef comes out in an hour, and he's like, man, thank you so much for coming up. Looks at my resume, says, you don't have any experience. This is just not where you start. I said, okay. So I drove back to Austin next Friday, went right back up. I met with the chef de cuisine. He pretty much said the exact same thing. He told me, he says, you need to go to more like a chain restaurant where you can get your knife skills down, you can work on In hindsight, that was BS because, high-end restaurants are where you get your knife skills down because they're doing the most knife work.
Sure.
Yeah.
Not a chain.
Maybe I should have went home and done some knife work, but, I think that was depressing. So I went back and, I wasn't going to go back. And I remember sitting on my couch saying, what the hell with this? This is where I want to do my externship. I can live with my mom and I can drive to Dallas and do this. And, I think I can handle it. So
Arlington's only 45 minutes from Dallas.
45 minutes.
Okay. That's a quick jaunt.
Yeah, you can make it work.
Yeah.
And I figured that I wasn't going to make much money being an extern in culinary. What I didn't know is what they were going to offer me. But so I drove back and I'm set through security. They may wait 3 hours. Executive sous chef comes out and he's like, "Man, you're not going to go away, are you?" And I said, "Man, I'm not. I really want to work here." And he says, "All right, we'll give you an externship. We're going to pay $7.45 an hour." I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh my goodness." I said, "All right, fair enough. I'll take it." And at the time, I was really, I was making good money an hour. I barely made enough money to have gas money to get back to my mom's house. And thank God she lived in Arlington, or I don't know how I would have made it. But thank God I did. And if I'd had it to do over again, I'd have done it for free. I would have just figured out how to make that happen, because the mansion was a brigade, and you don't see that in very few places in the States today. You go to Europe, you see a lot of that. But it's all forms of stagies and commies and stuff like that. Here, you can't afford to have a brigade.
Right.
And had I known what the mansion was, I probably would have never shown up. I mean, my first 3 weeks in that place, I was lost. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It's funny. I'm gonna talk about a chef in Houston right now. Nick Fine is a culinary director for Chris Shepard's restaurants currently. I haven't seen him since he's been back. He was in New York for a while. The very first cook I worked with in this industry was Nick Fine.
Oh, how cool.
And I'm looking forward to seeing him. And we haven't gotten together, but I don't even know if he remembers me, to be honest. But my first job at the Mansion on Turtle Creek was the bar station. The bar station was right next to the grill and roast station.
Okay.
So I show up my very first day, and he hands me 3 5-gallon buckets of new potatoes, and he says, "You need to quarter these. And by the way, this is my prep for my station. So when you quarter these, toss them in olive oil, salt, pepper, rosemary, roast them. Then you can get on your prep." And I'm like, "Holy smokes, it's 3 o'clock. I said, when does this need to be done?" He says, "My prep needs to be done by 4:45. Your prep needs to be done yesterday."
Welcome to 7:45 an hour.
And I'm like, holy smokes. So I cut a potato, flipped the 2 halves side. I turned the 2 halves both ways, and I cut this potato, and then I cut this potato. And he walks up and he goes, "Dude, you're never going to finish that." I'm like, "I can tell. I'm never going to finish this." So he slices it, rolls it, slices it, turns it, slices it, and dumps it in the bucket. And he's like, "This is how you cut these potatoes." I think I cut myself 3 times cutting those potatoes before I could get through it. But in 3 weeks, I could roll through them.
Yeah.
But I was so intimidated. who has to cut 5-gallon, buckets of new potatoes?
And not just cut them, for listeners who may not be familiar with the brigade system or how an establishment like that, because there are far and few between here in Houston especially. But like when you say commis, it's basically bitch of the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then when you say the prep work and everything, not only do you have to quarter those potatoes, but you got to do them in perfection and super fast,
Yeah.
And that's a skill set that, you just, you can be taught a little bit
You
in culinary
obviously learn
school.
in 3 weeks to survive.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be really rough starting at the bottom of the rung, because when you say brigade, it really is militaristic style, where it's like you answer to the guy right above you, he answers to that guy, and everybody's got their station, they got their prep. So when you talk about quartering potatoes, it ain't like, hey, how you doing? No, it's freaking get down to business and quarter these freaking potatoes.
For sure, it was, and Nick was a great guy to watch. And Nick is a talented cook, chef now, and he really owned that station. And so watching him to start was a really good example of how to be a good line cook and put your head down and just bang it out. Luckily for me, John Tezar came to, when I started, it was Dean Faring, and Dean Faring was transitioning into the Ritz-Carlton out of the mansion, which was legendary for them. Mm-hmm. John Tezar was the guy that got rehired there or took over his position. And luckily for me, as John Tezar came in and analyzed the line, my station was right there. I'm very common sense sound. I can talk to anybody. So he would just say, "This is wrong," and that's wrong. I'm like, "Yeah, it kind of looks wrong." In his mind, and I would just agree with him because that was what I needed to do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I would also give some opinion, just maybe some ebb and flow that could have been a little bit more efficient. And he took a liking to me, and within a year, I mean, I'll never forget. I was putting up Dean's tortilla soup in the back prep area, and Tizar came up to me and goes, "Hey, you want to make some real money in this industry?" And I said, "I'd like to make a little bit more than I'm making now. That'd be really good." And he's like, "Just pay attention and understand. I'm going to be really rough on you, but I'm going to get you there. And I'm going to get you there quick." And I'll be damned if he didn't. He remodeled the mansion. 80-seat restaurant. He built a 22-seat chef's room. Most people don't even remember it because it was only open a year and a half. With his departure, they closed it. But at that time, there was no other food coming out of the state the way that 22 seats was. He got the 5th star back. He got the 5th diamond back. James Beard was all over us. I mean, every national writer was in the restaurant. It was a cool time, and I was 19 and a half. And I was a lead line cook of it. He moved me up through every station on the line in like 6 months, and then moved me over as a lead line cook of the chef's room. We were doing 3 different tasting menus, chefs, vegetarian, seafood, all at one time. And a table could have mixed menus. So if you wanted seafood, vegetarian, I'm having chefs, no issues. And it was 2 cooks and him plating. We'd pass everything to the pass. He'd turn around and plate everything and send it out. We had a pastry chef and a sous chef that did the canapé tower. And to be honest with you, within that, I think we operated the chef's room for a year and maybe 4 months, maybe 6. We used every ingredient from the sea and the land you could think of. We did everything at the mansion other than whole animal butchery, really. And so, knowing what I know now, what I learned in that short period of time about cuisine was priceless. And I just thought that's how restaurants operate. I was like, this is how it is, and Tizar got pulled from the mansion, so I got an offer for a casual restaurant to be a sous chef. I was making $27,000 a year, and they offered me $34,000, and I thought I hit the jackpot.
That's it, baby.
And I'm like,
we're big time. Right?
My executive sous chef is like, "You're going where?" And I said, I won't mention the name, but I'm like, "Yeah, that's where I'm going." And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, "Well, I mean, $10,000 more a year, I could party a little bit more."
Yeah.
And so my first day I was a sous chef on the job, the chef says, "Can you start the mashed potatoes?" I said, "Sure." So I grabbed the pot and I'm running through the kitchen looking for the mashed potatoes. I can't find the potatoes. He said, "They're in the walk-in." I'm like, "Okay." So I go in the walk-in. I'm looking everywhere in the walk-in. Can't find the potatoes. I go back to the chef. I'm like, "Chef, I'm looking everywhere. I cannot find the potatoes, these mashed potatoes." And he says, "They're in the box, in the walk-in, in the top shelf." And I'm like, "Well, okay, potatoes in a box. Interesting." So I'm dumbfounded. I really don't know any better.
They were hibernating them. They were hibernating them in the box.
They were fermenting them. That's what they were doing.
Some new technique that we didn't know about.
So I go in there and pull these potatoes out of the box, and they're frozen in a bag, and I'm like, "Oh my God, what do I do with these?" So I grab the margarine, which is like liquid butter for these guys, and a spatula, and I grab a pot, and I'm whipping these things with butter. I'm salting them. I'm trying to get some flavor into them. And he comes with me, he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm making the potatoes." He goes, "You take a pot of boiling water, you bring it to a boil, you drop the bag in the water."
Oh, man.
Cut the bag open.
Bag in a bowl?
Boil in the bag, already made mashed potatoes. When they get hot, you take them out, you drop them in the steam well, and you put a cover on them. I'm like, "You don't even add butter to this shit?" And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "Oh my God, what did I do?" What did I go from the most scratch kitchen you could ever be in to potatoes in a bag?
Those listening, how important is the second half of that compared to the first half? Culinary school versus real world.
So I think it's you can look at it a bunch of different ways, but here's my opinion. I learned more in the first 3 weeks at the Mansion on Turtle Creek about how to operate a restaurant than I learned in 15 months in culinary school. But what I will tell you about culinary school is this, and we're in a weird in-between in culinary schools right now, and some are closing, and a lot of that's due to how the chef world ignited through TV, in my opinion. I like culinary school for an 18-year-old out of high school because it shows discipline and it shows commitment. And you can get your feet wet and really decide if that's really what you want to do. I think there needs to be a better interim program for culinary school. Here's a 3 months intern or startship or whatever you want to call it to see if that's really what they want to do. An introduction to is a great way to put it. I think I advise kids this. Look, if you want to go to culinary school out of high school, I think it's great. Go to the CIA, get a dorm room, spend 15 months, get the education, show the commitment of getting up every day and going and accomplishing something.
Right.
I think that's really good. For somebody that's in the middle of their career and wants to take a 360 and get in the restaurant business, I think getting in the restaurant business under someone who's got some integrity as a chef and an operator is the best thing you can do, because culinary school doesn't teach you how to operate a busy restaurant. They teach you how to cook classic cuisine on so many levels. You do end up working in a restaurant, but it's very controlled and very different than what a busy, chaotic restaurant really is.
Right.
So to answer your question, I think it's good in some cases.
Yeah.
I often recommend a lot of kids that are wanting to change what they're doing to not go spend that money. Get in the industry and make sure you love it first.
Yeah.
Because there's so many days that I don't care how passionate you are about food, it's hard to love it.
Yeah, I agree. I know, like you said, there's a lot of things going on with the culinary schools and so forth. I was fortunate enough that I could take a round ball and put it in a hoop. So Johnson & Wells said, hey, why don't you come up here and get an education? And I actually went the management route and then went into the culinary side of things after I had a management degree. And what I try and tell kids is, hey, if you want to go into culinary school, one, take a couple months, talk to a chef, say you'll work for free, and just do it for a week, and I mean, don't do it at
all in for a week.
The Red Lobster or something like that. Do it at, one of these, establishments that's getting written up, that has a credible chef like you're talking about. Yeah. Make sure you like that. Then if you do go to culinary school, you get what you get out of it. If you go in there and you're working hard and you're putting your head down and you're executing in the lab and things like that, and also getting kind of that business side of things as well, you can come out of it with some different things. I went the management route in the fact that I wanted to come away with a food service degree, where it's like, okay, look, maybe I don't love working in the kitchen or something like that. I can run anything that I could run a freaking grocery store or something along those lines.
Sure.
But, then after, a couple of years of working in the management side, saying, you know what, now I need to get, my chef chops, you start back down at the bottom and you really find out if you love it. But I think kids need to get that experience initially to make sure that they like it. And then when they do go to culinary school, it's one of those where the harsh reality is you're going to come out of culinary school, even a 4-year degree, sometimes, and you're going to get $8.50, $9 an hour. You're not coming out a chef unless, you're doing lots and lots of internships or something throughout your culinary school career. And I know that that's a long tangent and I apologize, but I think that that's just something I think needs to be discussed.
You're absolutely correct. And I agree with you. I think going back after you love it, you get a lot more out of culinary school. If you're already in love with cuisine, classic beurre blanc means something to you.
Right. If
you're not in love with cuisine yet and you don't know that's what you want to do for the rest of your life, then let me teach you how to make one that won't break every 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I think that's, you're exactly correct. Kids. It's funny, a story recently, before my stepmom retired, she was high up in AT&T, and one of her counterparts of a different region's son was at A&M, and he's a 4.0 student, and he was studying to be an engineer, and he came home one summer and he said, Dad, he's a sophomore, he said, I want to go be a chef. I don't want to do this anymore. His dad's just like, wait a minute. 4.0, you're going to be an engineer? Like, what, And he says, I'm not doing it. I've already looked at the culinary school I want to go to. I want to roll in it, and I'm done. I'm not going back to class. And so he's just lost. And he called my stepmom and said, hey, will Austin work with this kid? Obviously, if this is what he want to do, I'll support it. But I really want to see if he'll support it. And I said, yeah, sure. So his dad contacted me. I said, look, we're going to work 9 to 9. And we're going to work 6 days this week because I got a lot going on. And I'm going to leave him with me. And I'm going to start him in the dishwasher, and then I'm going to move him to prep, and then he's going to, by the time this week's over, he'll do some cool stuff with me. But we're going to make sure he understands what the food business is like. So his dad puts him up in this dump hotel on the east side of 1960. Sends him to the Woodlands every day.
Nothing's going to be fancy.
Oh,
for this 1 week.
He really didn't want him to. They had a shooting at his hotel. It was terrible. This poor kid. But he comes in, and we start working together, and I put him through the paces, and you could tell he liked to cook, but he hadn't done much of it, which was fine. The third day he comes in, he works until noon. He comes up to me and goes, Chef, I've made a terrible mistake. And I'm like, what do you mean you made a mistake? And he says, this is not for me. You people are nuts. Just at the pace that you guys work in this kitchen, he says, I just can't wrap my brain around it. So he said, I appreciate your time. I'm gonna go and thank you for everything. And he's terrified. And I'm like, hey, no, thank you. I hope it all works out for you. And he went straight home to his dad and he said, "I'll go back to A&M tomorrow."
I love it.
That's great, though.
I'll go back to A&M
th-
tomorrow.
They need it, you know.
And had he gone through culinary school, and that's where I think culinary school is a problem right now because of TV and celebrity chefs and how, you know, everybody thinks it's a rock star industry.
Right.
These kids are convincing their parents to go to culinary school. They're blowing $50,000.
Yeah.
Kids come out of culinary school, they get a restaurant in the first 3 weeks. They're like, I don't want to do this. This is not what I thought it was.
Right.
And so now parents are pulling back on it. And the culinary schools don't have the demand they had that they needed to build when that Food Network went nuts. And we're all watching it going, hey, being a TV chef sounds like the coolest thing ever.
And they banked on every single one of those kids, you know. So
They did.
Well, that's a great introduction. And I think we can probably we can keep going on that. Why don't we take a quick break for our sponsor, Duke's Premium Meats, and we'll come right back with part 2. So you guys stick around for more with Chef Austin Simmons here at Beavers on Westheimer.
Thank you, guys.
Duke's Premium Meats Home Delivery is your one-stop shop for premium quality meats delivered right to your doorstep. Delivering all over the United States, Duke's Premium Meats offers you the best in quality by personally working closely with local ranchers and butchers. Duke's Premium Meats offers everything from fillets and lobster tails to heart-shaped ribeyes to Texas-raised Wagyu brisket. Get amazing meat delivered right to your door by using Duke's Premium Meats. Visit their site at www.dukespremiummeats.com.
We're here today with a special guest, Chef Austin Simmons from TRIS and several other adventures that you have going on nonstop. We're going to talk about some of that. So for those just joining us, you know, part 1 was about how he grew up, Austin, you know, and how some of the troubles that you had, self-admitted troubles, how you fought for a couple of jobs that you really wanted, and you have come such a long way, I think, through talent and drive. And so with that being said, let's talk a little bit about, you know.
Well, we did skip skip a step from where you were working, like you said, kind of the casual restaurant with the bag of potatoes, and then there's another step in between. Because your stint at the mansion was pretty long.
How long was that?
2000, it was 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
3.5, 4 years. And then I was at the casual place for a year. And then John Tezar decided he was going to open Tezar's Modern Seafood and Steak in the Woodlands.
You worked under him.
And he went to New York. I went to the casual restaurant. In hindsight, maybe I should have chased him in New York. But look, I learned a lot in the casual restaurant too. So I packed up everything. He called me and said, I'm doing a restaurant in the Woodlands. And I said, I'm there. I packed up everything I own, moved everything to the Woodlands. And we ran that restaurant for about a year. It was undercapitalized from an investment standpoint. There's some shady stuff going on with money from the investor side.
Okay.
And Tezar's, I mean, he's, it was, I'm not real sure what all went on with all that, to be honest. I ended up running that restaurant after he left because I guess, I think in hindsight, he just had enough of all of it.
Yeah.
So he actually went back to Dallas, and me and Jeremy Robinson ran it for about 4 months, and we were driving down to the farmers market every day to get product. We were going to Restaurant Depot. I mean, the owners would come in and hand us cash every day. This is what you have to spend on product, and it was just it was a mess. Yeah. It was a great restaurant for quite a few months. It was extremely busy. One thing about investing in restaurants is if you can't get them open and be debt free, you're in big trouble. Yeah. Because if you're trying to pay all the opening costs while you have food and alcohol bills coming in,
right,
you might as well not even open it. Yeah. That's my advice.
Let alone a chef forward restaurant like
correct.
That too,
Yeah, it would have been fine had they not. I mean, all the Ed Don bills started coming in, and I'm like, hey, y'all haven't taken care of these because
equipment.
You're trying to pay equipment bills while you're paying inventory bills. It's you can't do enough sales for that.
Sure.
So, anyways, I left there, and Hubble and Hudson Market and Bistro is down the street. We had traded them a steamer for store credit, and I would go down there and buy sandwiches for the guys and check the place out. I really liked it; it was very unique, and I ended up going down there and applying for a job after I left there. And got sous chef position.
So for listeners outside of Houston or who may not have been to Hubble and Hudson, this was where they had the grocery store, they had the restaurant, And then they also had like the Viking cooking classes
Yeah.
upstairs. It was just such an awesome concept.
Yeah.
It was so cool. My wife and I have engagement photos there. So
Really?
like no lie. Yeah.
Wow, you
Yeah.
proposed to her there.
No. I mean, we got photos done. I didn't propose to her there.
I was gonna say, man, that's crazy.
No, we did like kind of the Woodlands area or whatnot, but I love that concept so much because it was just like, oh man, this is just everything a chef could want. I mean, it was. Like I said, you had kind of 3 different sections and so forth. And
Yeah, that was part of the problem. It needed toilet paper. House mom doesn't want to go to 4 grocery stores to get everything she needs for the week. But look, the market was a playground. There's no question. I mean, we had really cool product at our disposal. Just the truckloads of Frog Hollow peaches and pluots and plums that we brought in every year. I still can't find a stone fruit that tastes like that.
Where are y'all bringing them in from?
California.
Okay.
But you can't get that farm unless you buy a big load over here.
Right,
They're not
right.
just
That's right.
airmail you these stuff. So the market was great. I think the investors did everything they could to try to keep it where it needed to be. It may have been a little ahead of its time, but my true opinion is it needed more items in it that the everyday person could. HEB came for us hard. They really did. I mean, I can tell you 3 or 4 stories of products they bought that I was importing that they took the whole truckload of.
Wow.
I mean, HEB's rowdy.
Really?
Competing against HEB it's kudos to them. I mean, they've built a good business on getting rid of their competition. And
but you talk about like even Chris Shepard ran into that where when he first opened up, people were giving him a hard time about like, oh well, why is his pricing so high? Be like, because he's got to buy that farm's whole crop next year. Like he doesn't even have what they have right now because HEB's already bought it. So for him to get the local stuff that you want, or for y'all to get the things in, there's a certain amount that you have to buy and keep it away from these big stores from getting it. So it is ahead of its time. And unless you can do HEB volume, you're kind of up a creek, unfortunately. Yeah, absolutely.
I was buying a burrata. I'll just tell you one quick story. I was buying a burrata from Puglia, Italy. It was unbelievable. It was in a small black container. I was paying $4.50 each, and I had to, and it'd have a 2-week shelf life on it. And I sold it in our cheese and charcuterie counter. I sold it on the menu at the bistro. I mean, this is the best burrata I've ever had in my life. Still have never had any burrata even close to it. And HEB would come shop us. So they'd send people in and they'd look at our product offerings all the time. And they were writing all these notes. I mean, how many food critics are looking at retail stores?
That's right.
So it would get held up in customs sometimes. And so I took 20 cases every 2 weeks, which I thought was a lot of burrata. I mean,
yeah. That is a lot of burrata.
I didn't get it for a week, and I'm like, oh, I got held up in customs. Next week, I didn't get it. The 3rd week, I called my vendor, and I'm like, hey, man, where's the burrata? And he's like, yeah, nobody called you. And I'm like, no. He says, you're not going to get that burrata any longer. And I said, what do you mean? They said, HEB's bought the whole truckload from the import. They're taking everything we can bring in. Wow. And I go over to HEB, and they're charging $6 for it. I was selling it for $20 in the restaurant, with the chef. I mean, they not only stole the product, they made us look like we were gougers by selling it at a decent margin.
Was it in your backyard? Was it in the Woodlands?
It was the store right down the street.
Really?
And that was the only one they brought it to.
Oh, and then the press starts.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, look, they're smart. They're smart. They business is cutthroat, and at the end of the day, if they can bring in a product that their competition's selling, and they can undercut the price and make their competition look like they have no value.
Right.
Hey.
Christ alive.
It's a difficult business.
Come up with an item they can't get. There you go. I mean, we have retail wine at the kitchen, our second concept, our casual concept. We serve retail wines in the store. We don't have an alcohol license. We don't have a liquor license. We just have beer and wine. So you can come in, open a bottle there, have a glass there, take the bottle home, buy a case, buy 6 packs.
Right.
I took over to that store. We were buying retail wines. I said, the beautiful thing about being a restaurant and not, we have on-premise too because of our food sale percent. So my first thing I did in that store was I brought all my vendors in. I said, let me tell you something. Don't ever, ever, ever bring me a wine that HEB has. Ever. I don't want to play in that game. I don't want to. Kroger specs HEB. Don't bring me a wine they have. And they said, well, you need all on-premise. And I said, you know what? You're right. Only bring us on-premise wine. So at our kitchen concept, we sell on-premise restaurant wines at retail prices.
That's incredible.
And we do wine Wednesdays. We do percent off a bottle, 10% off a bottle, 20% off a 6-pack, and 30% off a case. And we make big wine deals and bring them in, and we have case stacks all over the store, and it's a beautiful thing. It's really worked out really well for us.
And everything that you're saying, it's so interesting because I can kind of see smaller versions of that around Houston, kind of come and go. But to have it where it's part of a larger conglomerate, I'll get there eventually. I think helps protect it too. You know, if you have, and I mean, I'm gonna freaking nerd out here a little bit, but if you have TRIS as the staple, that is the, you know, hey, look, this is what we can do, and then you have the more casual establishment, and then you have the curate, and then you have, you know, those. They all sound like they all are playing different pieces of the puzzle to help build a sustainable conglomerate, if that makes sense, as opposed to a restaurant that may not be able to stand on its own because it is selling its wine at retail pricing, you know?
Well, I mean, I also think it's a little genius for casual too. I mean, look, fast casual restaurants don't sell a ton of alcohol.
Right.
They just don't. So if you're 80% food sales, right? Wine, any alcohol you can move is gravy. Right. You're paying the bills with the food. Well, you better be at least, right? So all the alcohol is just added bonus.
Right.
And if you can develop that into a great program, now you're in a different level.
Now, when you were talking about how, you know, we'll call it a more casual dining establishment. When you have it as a retail style, do you still have to train your employees just as much for like the wine service and so forth as you would? Because I see mom and pop struggle because they're not quite up here on price point, and they're not down here where, you know, even if you offered wine, it's like, oh, okay, well, as long as they can get the cork out, you know, you're good. They're kind of playing in this middle here. But if you're doing it on the retail side, you know, what is that? And again, this is operational, but what type of training do your staff have for that? You know,
so to be honest, it's the hard part.
Yeah.
The hard part is to get your staff at that level to research and develop wine. We have our wine vendors come pour every Wednesday. But to be honest with you, at that level, with that restaurant, I keep it very generic. I bring in varietals that most people know.
Right.
Cab, Malbec, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir. I do get a little funky around the world with some things, but it has to be. We have to be able to put signage on it that can relate to someone who has a generic wine palate. Mm-hmm. Look, I know quite a bit about wine, but I would tell you my palate and my wine knowledge is very generic. I mean, you can study wine your whole life and not be smart in it. Right. I mean, it's just what it is. So I buy labels that jump off the bottle. The first thing I ask are what the vendor is, what's the label look like? What varietal is it? And is it clearly written on the bottle? I want it to jump out at the guest. Mm-hmm. And then through trends, I've really decided what they want to drink.
Right.
And then I make sure the management team and the people that are customer facing understand what those varietals are. Mm-hmm. And then we'll have variations of those varietals. So maybe we'll have a cab from South Africa that's a bit smoky and a bit earthy and is not fruit forward. I prefer that style of wine. I don't want a big fruit bomb. Mm-hmm. But we definitely have the juicy Napa cab that's got a good tannin structure that dries out your mouth too. Mm-hmm. You know, and then we have some that don't dry out your mouth. So I think we try to play in that and train them specifically on those. And then if we bring in something funky, we say, oh, if you like this, you'll like this. Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, trying to get them in a conversation of terroir and fermentation and, you know, all that is not really what we focus on. I leverage big case stack. I just bought 150 last week for one case stack.
Wow.
Because the vendor needed to make a move on it. So I try to find the good deals, leverage that for the customer. The restaurant makes a decent margin. The customer really makes out because, you know, Venmo is the new thing, right?
Right.
So everybody and their mom's using apps to find out what you're selling the wine for at retail and whether or not you're getting a good deal. So I don't make any wine buy that I can't undercut the internet.
Sure. Gotcha.
So I want to be $2 to $3 under what you can buy it online for at the kitchen. And if I can't meet that number, then I don't buy it.
Does this wine sometimes go into rotation at your other
Never.
Okay, so this
totally
is
separate.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, TRIS is a fine dining restaurant. It needs alcohol sales to be at a good margin to warrant some of the labor we put in the food.
Right.
I mean, just bottom line, if you're cooking everything from scratch and you're you're making everything in house, you got to make up that labor somewhere.
Since it's fine dining, you guys have a sommelier on staff there.
We do.
Okay, so
Joshua
they're
Olivier.
constantly offering up pairings and things that would go well with dishes or not.
He is. He works the room very well. We have a somm over the whole restaurant, Joshua Olivier, and then we have a lady by the name of Claudia that does a lot of our wines and curate under Josh.
Okay.
So
Your bar program is incredible too. I mean, even just the butter old fashioned. I mean, that's so much chef stuff that is part of it. And then when I sat there, I was actually fortunate enough. The bartender just started pouring me little samples of like all the interesting things that they had. I mean, you had like infused like all the, no, they were small. They were small samples.
that's okay. As long
I
as it's,
posted it on Instagram. And it was like, so
we got some marketing out.
Yeah, a little marketing, right? But
They're
I mean,
fired. No,
so,
I'm kidding.
I hope not.
No. We fat wash all the alcohols in the back of the house. We make some of the serves. We have a really good bar team, but we're actually we're taking that to the next level with fat washing. I mean, we're into it. That brown butter bourbon is our number one seller by far. We have women drinking old fashions, which I maybe that happens a lot in the city, but I haven't seen a lot of that up there. I mean, they normally want a fruity martini or something. I mean, we really taming that bourbon down by that brown butter really makes it a lot smoother on the palate. And to be honest with you, it makes it to where I'll drink it because I don't like a real. I don't like a real heavy, burn from a bourbon personally.
What is fat wash?
Basically, fat wash is when you take a fat and you wash the liquor.
Okay.
So we wash the liquor with the fat, but we infuse the fat with various flavors. So our brown butter is infused with rosemary and Madagascar vanilla bean.
Sounds terrible.
And then we fat wash the bourbon.
Sounds terrible.
A lot of people are, they may think, well, bourbon's supposed to be this, and it is supposed to be that, but.
And it still is.
It still is, but it
got a
isn't.
little twist.
Man, it's elevated. It's so
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think elevation is a really good thing, especially as trends continue to evolve, right? Your bar has to evolve as well. And so that needs to be just as creative as the menu to keep the doors open and to keep people wanting to come into your facility and, more importantly, coming back.
Well, speaking of that too, you made a statement where you're like, oh, that's typically what you see in the city. Y'all are in a very unique spot to be. I mean, my parents live in Willis and my sister lives in the Woodlands. And it's like, holy cow, you have an establishment up there that I wouldn't expect to be in the Woodlands. Not to say anything about the Woodlands. That's not a knock on the Woodlands or whatnot, but how creative it is and the influences that you have. I mean, you have this incredible ramen with this like super like deep broth that I'm like, well, shit, like that's a fantastic dish. Like, why are the Woodlands so fucking lucky? Like, what did we do? Like, I mean, I live out in Katy, so it's like, well, it's completely different. But
you got payway.
You are doing food in a location and with clientele that there is probably a piece of that pie. With the net income that's needed, the education about food and so forth. But that pie seems to be a little bit smaller than other areas of town. And that statement, like you said, hey, usually I see people drink this in the city and now they're doing it out here. You're kind of one of the first to put the benchmark out there in the Woodlands. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I really do feel that way, especially.
I mean, I can't take credit for all that, but the Woodlands, 2000, octopus is my favorite thing to eat, period, and cook. In 2009, when I put octopus on the menu, I put baby octopus on the menu. It wouldn't sell. Nobody wanted it. So I pulled it off, and it just breaks my heart. So then I put 2 to 4 pound octopus, a little bit bigger, right? Wouldn't sell. Take it off. So then I went to 4 to 6. Wouldn't sell. After fighting with it for a year, I put 6 to 8 pound. I got the biggest octopus you can buy. I put it on the plate, sent it out to the table, and I went to the table. I said, "Look, if you won't eat it, I'll buy it." It became our number 2 selling appetizer and has been the top 5 since.
Wow.
But now there's 4 or 5 restaurants in the Woodland that has octopus. But back then, we couldn't sell it. I think the Woodlands is evolving extremely quick, and it's evolved unbelievably since I came to it. The community is awesome. A lot of amazing people that are extremely well traveled, that know food. And yes, your pie is smaller. But let me tell you what that does. It's funny. I did this. I won't tell you who the chef was, but I did this event down here a couple of months ago, and I walked in. The chef said to me, I was carrying a flat top, and he says, "I am so tired of hearing your name." And I said,
Hey, welcome.
I said, wow, come to the city. I'm so good to see you too. And he was like, well, if you're hearing my name all the way in the Woodlands, I must be doing something right. And he's like, no, you don't have any competition.
Oh boy,
That's not true.
I said, well, we got Whataburger and Burger King. I mean, you know,
we got somebody.
you know, I said, let me explain something to you though. When you have a smaller pie, that makes you be that much better. Because if you piss off any part of that smaller pie, they're not coming back. And guess what? They talk to the rest of the pie.
Oh yeah, it's a tight
When
community.
you have a big pie, because there's lots of people in a densely populated area, you can piss off 20% of them and still have a business.
Right.
When you have a small area with only certain people that you have to pull from that understand or want to be a part of the experience you're providing, you can't screw up. So I actually think it's harder to operate there in a lot of ways. Because you don't get second chances, and if the community starts to talk about you, that you're not doing something that they like, it's really hard to recover from that.
Yeah, because when you talk about the rest of the pie, you become the special destination that is not necessarily the one-off, but like, you know, hey, we'll go maybe once a month or twice a month. But if you start to lose that could be huge, you know. And so you gotta. The crazy thing that I think I saw was when we ate at Hubble and Hudson. The restaurant portion of it, I think it was more steak centric and now TRIS has like such a Asian influence, and I wonder where that comes from, because you know, through your career, I didn't see anything. Doing a little bit of research, I didn't see anything that was like highlighting, oh well, he worked at this fine dining Asian restaurant, or like, you know, hey, there was, you know, something that really influenced. And it's cool to see that on the menu, and I think the Woodlands is very blessed to have such a creative menu. Right
Asian
there.
flavor to me it allows you to lighten the food up and still have robust flavor. I was trained very French, so lots of heavy fats, and I try not to eat that myself, so I've tried to steer my cuisine somewhat out of that. I mean, don't get me wrong, we still have a truffle pasta that'll put you down, and I still want to eat that. But I like that you can take some of these Thai and Korean and Asian flavors and put them together. What I find, what I did know that after traveling to Singapore and Japan, that I know now, is that as Americans, a lot of us are doing that style of cuisine, using a lot of those flavors, but we're fusing the ingredients. Right. The biggest thing I've learned as a chef, and what's really changed my food the most, is understanding the culture ingredients and not fusing them with we may use a texture element that's not indicative to that cuisine if we cook in Thai or Korean or Chinese or whatever it may be. But as long as it doesn't impede on the flavor. So you can have a bite of food that's got a lot of flavor in your mouth. I mean, boom. I mean, this smoke, this has got a lot of flavor, but does it have a direction? And do you understand what that direction? The best bite of food, in my opinion, tells a story. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that end better smack you in the face with what that dish is about. So if it's a Korean crab dish, we better taste nothing but crab at the end. Right. And that story is the bite that you remember. You're not going to remember just muddy flavor in your mouth. So when I really stop fusing ingredients from other cultures, and really, if we make it Thai, it's Thai, and we try not to cook anything in that dish that's not indicative to how they cook in Thailand. We interchange the technique, but we don't interchange the flavor combinations.
But still staying really true to it.
Correct, and we really refined the food, and it became something that people are like, "Holy shit, this is different."
Do you see TRIS as a destination restaurant, or do you see it as a central spot for the Woodlands?
I'm biased.
It's not a trick question. But
I mean, it's destination by far.
See, because
I think it's the community. We are pulling from other areas, no question. But the community is supporting it 100%. We couldn't be more blessed than we are with the community in TRIS. I mean, we closed 2 days a week. We felt it was important to our employees for their families. We were spread out into 7 days worth of business, and we said, look, we're going to open 5 days. We're going to operate those 5 days really, really well. We're going to give our team time off. We're not going to make them come back at 7 o'clock in the morning after getting nailed on a Saturday night for brunch. And we're going to expect our team to operate at a very high level those 5 days.
Yeah.
But to do that, you have to have a backer that agrees with that philosophy, and a backer who trusts you with that.
Fortunately for us, it's his idea.
That's cute. That's huge. Because I've seen guys, they'll come in, yeah, I want the chef, and I want this, and I want this. Yeah, okay, no problem. But we'll be closed Sunday or something like that. And then, like you said, As soon as they start to see the numbers or the margins, or they come to that realization, they're like, no, we're switching this up.
What really helped us too in the Woodlands, we hired a really good team. I mean, we have Mr. Perry is a general manager out front, and he is the guest whisperer. You know, he and you know, we spent all the way to the valet stand. We want if you dine with us and we know who you are, we can find your information. We tell our valet your name. Our expectation is the valet addresses you when you pull up.
Sure.
Hi, Mr. Darren. Welcome back to TRIS. Or we understand this is your first dining experience or your birthday, it's your anniversary. We take pictures of all the guests that eat with us regularly. We have a book, a VIP book.
That's crazy.
That we have pictures. I mean, it's almost creepy to some people. They're like, you want our picture? And we're like, yeah. We need it because we want our valet to recognize you. We want our host stand to recognize you.
Sure.
TRIS is an experience. It's not just about the food. It's what the team has been able to accomplish, and it's in a feeling that you feel when you're sitting inside that restaurant.
Yeah.
We want you to be blown away from the minute you step out of your car. If the kitchen team cooks one of the best bites of food you've ever eaten, then wonderful. But we also understand at that level that it's an event, and you're here to celebrate something most of the time. And even if it's just date night, you're still celebrating with someone. Yeah. And our job is to create that environment. And when I learned as a chef that the front of the house is just as important as the back of the house, if not more, that really changed what I do as an operator, because if you don't understand that, you're in big trouble in the restaurant business. Lots of good restaurants go out of business with great food and bad service. Very few restaurants go out of business with really good service and okay food.
But very few restaurants operate at that level that you have and at the price point that you have. Because, you know, I would say, you know, what was Pass and Provisions or something like that, I gave those guys a lot of credit in the fact that it was like, I felt like the price point that you were paying, you were getting this level of food and this level of service and so forth. And I think I feel very much the same way about TRIS, you know, where yes, it does, you know, the Woodlands does support a fine dining establishment, but maybe they're kind of used to the white tablecloth, the kind of, you know, steak and, you know, shrimp cocktail type of menu type of thing. To have something that's so creative, to have something that from the bar drinks that aren't traditional, that are pushing the envelope and things like that, that is the significant difference between what y'all do at TRIS and what everybody else is doing. And even if you look at the kitchen is casual establishment, but still very chefy, you know, very, very chef focused, which is awesome too, you know. And so I think you're pushing the envelopes on those things, and then to push the envelope on the service side of it, you know, in my mind, that establishment is significantly higher price point wise than what y'all currently have. And it doesn't have an awesome happy hour like y'all have. It doesn't have, you know, the Curate series and things like that. This is a gem that I hope, you know, that, you know, people continue to support. And it looks like they have, especially with all the press that you've been getting, which is really cool. We're going to call that part 2 right there. We'll come back in part 3. We'll talk a little bit more about all the establishments that you work with and all the events that you do, and then also talk a little bit about the future.
Okay.
Cool. So stay tuned for part 3. We'll be right back after a word from Duke's Premium Meats. Duke's Premium Meats Home Delivery is your one-stop shop for premium quality meats delivered right to your doorstep. Delivering all over the United States, Duke's Premium Meats offers you the best in quality by personally working closely with local ranchers and butchers. Duke's Premium Meats offers everything from fillets and lobster tails to heart-shaped ribeyes to Texas-raised Wagyu brisket. Get amazing meat delivered right to your door by using Duke's Premium Meats. Visit their site at www.dukespremiummeats.com. Welcome back to the Cost of Goods Told podcast. We are here with Chef Austin Simmons of TRIS. We covered a ton in parts 1 and 2.
Just scratched the surface, too.
Just really did. One thing that I want to make sure that I elaborate on a little bit, I guess in part 1 when we were talking about everything that you do, I want to make sure that people understand that within TRIS, there's that collaborate and the curate, all within kind of the same establishment and so forth. So people don't think that there's 5 different places or something like that, but like you can get those experiences at the same location, which is really cool, because we've been talking about the menu, we've been talking about all of those things, and that's mostly been kind of TRIS at this point. Yeah. Could you elaborate just a little bit on what curate is?
Yeah, so TRIS is unique in itself too. We're casual for lunch and high end for dinner. We pull the tablecloths off. It's white marble at lunch. We're the menu's extremely different, way different price point. Sandwich, salad, cool, entrees that are easy to eat. I mean, nothing like dinner. Dinner is more formal. And then Curate is a restaurant inside of a restaurant, kind of like the Pass and Provisions was, if you would, but Curate's not as big. So we convert 2 of our private dinings that overlook an area where we cook, and it's 30 seats. And we can do a one top all the way to, and we do buyouts of it all the time. So,
and it's a prefix menu?
It is, but Curate stands for Curated Tasting Menu. And the name came about because I was talking about it. I said, I really want to do a tasting menu that is curated around the guest. We'll have a prefix, but if you're vegan, if you're vegetarian, if you're flexitarian, if you're pescatarian, whatever you want to eat, we'll cook it. I mean, we have the beauty of having a restaurant next to it.
Yeah.
So if I have all those ingredients at my disposal and I can't throw a menu together with a little bit of notice for your dietary restriction, then maybe we shouldn't be doing tastings.
And this side of it is reservation only, correct?
It is,
Yeah,
but
okay.
I mean, we every once in a while we'll do a few walk-ins. So
Very cool.
but typically those are all booked online. So we curate that menu around that guest, and we change it, probably every 2 to 3 weeks, and it just depends on the season and what we're inspired by at the time, what we change it to. But it operates Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We do off-day dinners for larger groups.
Okay.
And it's been awesome because, Curate is a great place to develop cooks. A tasting menu is harder at first until you get your skill set down, but then it becomes a bit easier because it's controlled. You know that when you put out the hamachi, that the crab's coming next, right? Unless we're working an off menu. In the restaurant, you never know what's going to be on that ticket that's on that menu. If you really can hone in on a tasting menu and you can remember what you were working before on that course, and what's coming up, and you can set that up.
Right.
And it's almost like a symphony. It can be one of the most magical cooking experiences, in my opinion, you can have as a chef. Is a really well-run tasting format menus. It can be a blast because you want to puke the whole time, but you can control it if you're a rock star. And that's that feeling of, we're about to fall, but we're good enough that we don't. It's hard to find that on a normal line because in a tasting menu restaurant like Curate, you can run it with a couple of people and a chef plating.
Is it a satellite kitchen, or do you operate that in the same kitchen?
It's the same kitchen, but it's a different area. So we have induction, and we have smaller ovens, and it's its own line essentially.
Right, but
it's not much bigger than 12 feet long.
Right, and when we reference Pass and Provisions, Pass was one thing, Provisions was another. It had Pass had its own kitchen. So are some of your guys doing double duty with?
Oh yeah, that we
Damn.
Well, I have 2 cooks that only do Curate,
Okay.
and then they do off-site parties and events. We like to go off-site and do different things. So
Not like you already have a full table, huh?
Yeah,
Or
well,
a full
I mean,
plate, huh?
whatever you need, it's what we're there to do. So
it sounds like, in through your own words, you can be on the edge of vomiting, right? For the cooks, you're developing cooks, right? And they're under some high pressure. So that's exhilarating for the cook. How is it exhilarating for the customer? What can they expect out of that?
the service is a bit different. It's just TRIS is actually chasing it pretty hard, which has been cool because the bistro and bistro service was good. Curate was phenomenal. TRIS is really, really good, and Curate's still phenomenal. So it's been interesting how that change has taken place. But because we know what's next, because we can stage out your meal, we can do more wow moments in that experience than we can do when we don't have the information we need.
Sure.
And sometimes in TRIS we can get the information, and sometimes we can't. The more information we have on the diner, the more we can slip in those wow moments that you're never going to forget.
Right.
You're not always going to blow someone's hair off with a bite of food. It's very subjective. Like I might be wowed by something you're not going to be.
Yeah.
So we can't always bank on that bite of food blowing somebody out of their chair. We have to bank on those little acts of service that provide those wow moments that guest never forgets, and that's what brings them back to the restaurant. So Curate is a playground for that, because you're not coming to Curate if we're not asking you 3 or 4 questions before you come. We're going to pry that out of you, and then it allows us to really manipulate that dining experience.
So the guest has to be open to that, right? I mean, it can't be that structured like I gotta have the walls need to be here because you guys are playing outside those walls.
Yeah.
It's a dining experience, right?
It is. And then we're also allowed to add wine to that meal, to every course. And we have really good percentage of wine pairing in Curate. So
That's cool. That's really cool.
and we pair wine a little bit different. Maybe a lot of somms pair it, though. We pair an ingredient, not the dish. And we typically pair the hardest ingredient of the dish. And we find that is awesome to what happens to that food when you have that pairing that way. And we're very European in our approach. Like, you know, we are, I hate to say protein centric, but you can rest assured when you come eat 8 courses with me, 5 of them are going to have protein, and you're not going to Whataburger when you leave, unless
It's not that
unless
Nordic
you got
cuisine.
wasted and you need to feel, you know, you need to soak it up with a bun or something.
Well, they're
But
owned by Chicago now, so I mean, you know, it's going to be tough. You know,
I'm with JJ. Let's buy it.
Let's get it back, right?
I don't think anything will change, but I'm excited.
Yeah, I agree. So, you know, we're progressive like a European tasting menu. I mean, we don't focus on making things look like a caterpillar and it tastes like nothing. You know, our food has soul.
Yeah.
It has temperature. My plates are at an exact amount of degree. Like, I know exactly how long it takes my plate to cool down from the pass to the dining room. I set that temperature in the hot box. It stays at that temperature for a reason. Our cold food is cold. Our hot food is hot. That brings out the salt. That brings out the acid.
Right, wakes it up.
And if you don't eat something and are comforted by it in TRIS or Curate, we're not doing our job. I'm not here to make it look like Picasso. I'm here for you to take a bite of food and go, wow.
Right. But to have a restaurant with TRIS being so, structurally found, and I mean, just a solid restaurant on its own, and then you're going to throw the curveball of, okay, now we're also going to do a prefix menu, or the specialty menu on top of that, and then to also then say, now we're also going to do a collaboration series and bring in somebody else from the restaurant. And from the menus that I've seen, and for those who don't, if I didn't explain it again in part 1, the Collaborate series is where you and a chef from another establishment will actually put an 8-course dinner together for, I think the last one was almost 35 people.
Yeah,
Something along those.
I mean, the one we did with Will was 70.
See, yeah.
Yeah,
On Monday nights.
you bring
That's
William
on
in the
Monday.
house, that place is packed.
Well, the cool thing about that too, and I mean, mentioning Will, I think that would be the easiest menu that I could kind of identify and see that everything had a bit of both of y'all in it. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but we saw that at the Houston Barbecue Festival, where it was the smoked beef tongue, and then like the Asian elements to it, and then it was the pork belly, and I mean, just it wasn't, hey, I got. Going back to the Collaborate with the menu that you did with Will, it wasn't, hey, I got these first 3, you got the next 2, I'll take the last one and one. It was. It really was a collective together, which is really cool, but also another freaking curveball that you got to throw at yourself when you've already trying to think of, okay, what's going on in the restaurant? What am I going to push next on the envelope with the curates? Now I have to push the envelope again. It's
So
sorry.
no, you're good. My job at this point is to grow cooks. The awards are great. The notoriety are great merely because it grows business, but I don't need any of that. And I learned that a couple of years ago. I mean, I of course, don't get me wrong. When we read some articles, I get excited, but I try to make it about the team. I mean, look what you're going to be able to put on your resume. I mean, my resume is great, and I've worked really hard for that. So, but what can those cooks take with them? So my job at this point is to create a legacy through cooks. I really, in the industry, want to make an impact in fundamental cuisine. Sauce work's being lost. I mean, we don't even know what that is. We think an aioli sauce work. I mean, look, we have aiolis. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not downplaying what that is, but housewives make those, right? I mean, anybody with a VitaPrep can make an aioli, but can you make a stock? Can you reduce it, convect it? I mean, I feel like part of the reason why I'm here is to give that back to cooks. So how do I step back and be humble about that, but really grow them? What do I do? And that's the question I've asked myself for the last 2 years. And Collaborate is the first thing that came to mind. Okay, so what is my biggest problem in the food industry today is a lack of loyalty. I mean, I've been with this company for 9 years. That's a long time for a chef to be working for a company, in my opinion, right? These guys, and especially cooks and sous chefs, they hop around They get a little bit of your playbook and they think they know it all, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do we slow that down and make it more healthy for all restaurant operators? And collaborate to me was, okay, let's bring in other chefs and let's let them work these dinners. My guys that are really hungry, that really want to grow, let's let them work these dinners with these other chefs. And either one or two things are going to happen. Either they're going to learn a shit ton, which is going to be great for them, or they're going to see they already got it really well with me, and I win either way.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and that helps me learn. It allows me to make relationships with chefs in the cities and farther than that, because I am been stuck with my head down for a lot of years trying to hone my craft in. I haven't got out a lot. And I think, originally I wanted Collaborate to be what me and Will made it, at that first dinner. But what I learned is it's hard to coordinate that with chefs. Me and Will we read each other like, he knows what I'm looking for, and I know what I'm looking for, and then he knows what he's looking for, and I kind of understand why he's looking for that. It's very hard to explain, but when we create a bite of food, we test it, but typically by the third time, that dish is, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And it's because two skill sets come together for that. The deal is that, Thomas Keller in my mind is the first chef I studied, and is one of the, still, I can't think of anybody in my opinion that's like him in the United States. Not because he revolutionized some food in the United States, not because he has been a 3-star Michelin for so many years, but look at his proteges.
Yeah.
He's got so many proteges that have come out from underneath him. The best bite of food of my life was at Corey Lee's restaurant venue in San Francisco. I flew my wife out there 4 months later just to eat that damn bite of food again. We didn't do anything but go back to that restaurant. I'll never forget it. That was his chef de cuisine for 15 years. He's taken Thomas' elements and mixed Korean flavors into it, and he's doing Thomas Keller tastings but with Korean technique and ingredients in it, and I'm telling you, it's show-stopping food. I think, but that's what I respect about Thomas. So I was fortunate to win quite a few awards, and I don't think I'm one of the top 10 chefs in Houston by any means.
Congratulations on it, by the way.
Whatever. I appreciate it.
See, it's that whatever.
Right.
I think that my job now is to get my cooks to get to that level, and if I can't get them to that level, then what really have I built? I've proved that I can cook.
Sure.
Well, I knew I could cook a long time ago, or I wouldn't have chased this industry the way I have. Right. I wouldn't have spent all the nights and weekends at work if I didn't think I could cook. I would have already delivered milk again. Those guys made good money.
Right.
I could do that the rest of my life and probably retire decent. One of the best things anyone ever said to me was, "We're all cooks." That doesn't mean you're a chef. A chef is a leader of people and process, and that's the difference in leadership and supervision. It's easy to supervise with process. It's very hard to lead. Leading is something very different than what supervising is. And I think if you don't ever cross that bridge, and so if a chef is leader of people and process, then we need to be the leaders of people and help them with their careers. And in return, that comes back to you too, right?
Yeah.
The more people you grow, the better off you're going to do. And the more people want to work for you because they see that you're turning out talent, and these people's lives are better because they work for you.
Yeah, your talent pool is growing much easier and quicker, right, than someone who doesn't really care, and is that someone who's actually leading like yourself. But what do you see? What's your vision? And I hate to sound like that corporate question. What's your vision for yourself in the next 5 years, young man? Because really, you are a young man to me. But in all seriousness, what do you want to do now? What's next?
I would like to operate a company with multi concepts that we're not pigeonholed into one thing. I'd love to come to Houston. I feel like I've been making my name and here for a lot of years, and I think that's worth exploiting a little bit. So I guess next for me would to do a brick and mortar in Houston. I would love to. I don't know what that concept is just yet. Got some good ideas, but
sure.
I think the restaurant industry is in an interesting place right now. One of my board members, Haidar, is talked a lot about virtual restaurants, and you see what I can't remember the chef that's coming back to Houston. What's his name?
I forget
what
too,
I'm
but I know exactly what
Gabe.
it's all delivered.
Gabe. I think it's Gabe. He's a talented chef, and you look at what our casual restaurants are doing in Uber Eats, and you can't build that platform if you don't make money. So I think there's a very interesting spot right now of where restaurants are headed. Houston's an interesting market. I sit back and I watch it from afar. I mean, these restaurants pop up, they're big hits, and then sometimes they don't work out. And it's like, how could they have been such a big hit with so many people to pull from and not work out? So, you got to make the right move. I definitely don't want to go jump into a bad decision because with the space, but obviously I do want to grow, and I think we've put TRIS in a really good position since we've reopened with that leadership style. I mean, I'm able to walk away from that restaurant under Chris Perry and Courtney and Brian and Joshua, Dominique and Angela. I mean, those guys can operate that place at the same level. I mean, Allison Cook came in for our review. I had posted I was flying on a private jet to Key West because one of our customers was so kind to send me and my wife to Key West on our vacation. And we hadn't been reviewed yet, but we'd been open 9 months. I mean, I assumed she was already coming. I didn't think she was coming. So she comes and on that Saturday night and has dinner, and I'm not there. And they call me like, Allison Cook's here. I'm freaking out. I'm like, look, you guys got this.
Do what you do, right?
Just do what you do every day. I wouldn't have left if I didn't think you had it. That was Saturday. We were closed Sunday and Monday. I show back up Tuesday at lunch, and she's sitting in the dining room for our second visit. And I'm like, damn. So I go out there, and I'm like, after lunch, and I said, wow, Miss Cook, you're back. I said, so good to see you. And she goes, how was your vacation? I'm like, how'd you know I was on vacation? And she's like, well, you posted flying on a private jet on Instagram. And I'm like, oh, yeah, good point. And she's like, I was like, it was very good. Thanks for coming. I appreciate you coming to see us. She said, it must be the highest honor for you as a chef to be served the meal I was served in your restaurant while you were on vacation. That to me is when you've made it.
That was the biggest compliment.
I've never had a bigger compliment in my career, ever. I mean, she could have given me a 5-star review, and that one compliment about that one meal would have meant everything to me because the team did it without me.
Yeah.
And none of my chefs right now have ever been a part of a 5-star restaurant. They haven't had that experience at the mansion like I had, where you broom-wall the vegetable wrong and you're getting yelled at. I mean, that's the discipline, right? So for them to be able to do that without me, I knew that I had finally stepped back in my career and led more instead of supervising. Right. Here's your checklist. Checklists are good, but they don't create empowerment. They don't create. They have to be bought in way before you give them that damn list, or they're just going to check the box.
You can taste an inspired menu. You can taste an inspired dish. I mean, we've talked to different guys where I'm like, dude, you were pissed off when you made this recipe, like, weren't you? Or like, you're mad that people don't understand Greek food, how it's supposed to be understood, and so this dish is really just throwing it in my face, type of thing. And so if you have that team that's bought in and empowered and so forth, you can taste a huge difference.
Chris Perry and me, he was the general manager of Robards, and he came along and he's really helped me understand that part of how do we get there and how do we lean on each other, and it's not about me being the boss. It's about people doing things without me telling them they need to do them, and he's just been such an inspiration on that front. And it's not about me, it's about them.
Yeah.
And when you can step back and find that, that's just really been a godsend for me, because 4 years ago I'd have been like, you don't like it? Let me show you the back door. But you don't develop people that way. And I probably lost a lot of really good people over the years because I wasn't a good enough leader. I say probably. I have lost a lot of really good people over the years because your job as a leader is to look inside that person and see what they're capable of, not what they can do right now. And how do you pull that out of them? That's deep, dude. That's hard to do. And a lot of people just assume do it themselves. You don't grow that way, and you damn sure don't develop people that way. So, my job is to look at those people, and for years I never did that. You can't do what I need you to do right now, so you have no value to me.
So when you talk about expanding to a second location into Houston, now TRIS is TRIS is one of those examples where I talk about, I'll use the example of like Trinity or like Oxheart or, any of those super chef-focused restaurants. Now, those establishments seem to have anywhere between a 5 and 7 year type of shelf life because they are so attached to the chef. They are so much, that chef has to be there every day.
I would argue that. And chef, I mean, look, Gordon Ramsay's got Michelin star restaurants all over continents. Wolfgang Puck has Michelin star. I mean, look at Joel Robuchon and what he had when he passed away. I think it's all about developing those people.
Yes.
I do agree that it is a lot about those chefs in some of these restaurants that you mentioned, but I mean, you're seeing Shepard do it right now with 4 very different concepts.
Right.
And he can't be in those restaurants every night. I think in my opinion, you need to work backwards.
Okay.
Where a lot of people don't. You say, I want to do this concept, and I'm going to go find a space and force it in that space, and this is what we're going to do. Knowing your community and what's around you, the Woodlands has taught me, and it's the best blessing they could ever given me. You can take concepts that work in certain places and go transplant them in another place, and it won't work. It just won't. So I think I have a lot of really good. I can create food on lots of different levels. I know that now. So as long as we have the right build out with the right space and we can get the right bar with the right amount of seats that make sense for the rent and everything else that comes along with that financials, we can be as whimsical with the food as we want to be, as that area will allow us to be. And you do that by doing your homework of that area. You go watch diners. You go see how they dine, see what they're drinking, sit at the bars, see other restaurants that are in the area that are successful and what people are eating. If you go to a classic Italian restaurant in a certain area and everybody's eating chicken and chicken parm, you know what you need to serve on that menu in that area, right?
Right.
So I think
and that's taken a lot of ego out of it, which is really cool to see you say,
Well, you can't build a platform for growing the cook. We're always going to cook with proper technique, but we don't always have to cook fancy food to do that. If you want to build that platform to grow as many people in your career as possible, you better have successful restaurants.
Yeah.
Because if you have misses, that investment becomes a lot more difficult to obtain. Look, if you cook from your soul and you don't worry about all that, and you've got the fundamentals to back it, and you cook what the people want, typically the reviews are going to follow. Now, sometimes that doesn't work, but that's okay. Like, you got to decide: do you want to be in a, do you want to build the platform, or do you want to only focus on the national attention? And I mean, look, the ideal world, you have both, and that's the crossroad that I've been in the last 3 years. Is how do I still maintain something that's forward thinking in the industry, like the 10-year-old cow that we launched,
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was something groundbreaking for me as a chef, to be a part of something that, quite frankly, is just not being done in very, very few places in the world. I've been working on that since 2015. People don't even understand, they don't even understand what it is. They're like, oh my God, you age an animal 10 years? It's like, not necessarily, So I hope that I can still be an industry leader with what we put in the concepts, but I need to provide better living for people that want to work for me in the company, and take care of your employee, not your customer, is something I do a lot of reading on, because I think if you take care of them, they're going to take care of that customer. In Europe, they're harvesting bulls 10 to 15 years of age, and they're slowly feeding them out, and they're saying that's some of the best beef in the world. A specific guy in Spain's cave aging them, and I saw that on Steak Revolution on Netflix in 2015, and I'm like, oh, this is genius. I am extremely good friends with Jordan Beeman, who is the heir or the son of Ronald Beeman, who started Heart Brand, and Jordan is taking over the company and growing it, and in 2015 we were decent friends, but we weren't what we are today. And I started talking to him about older cows. He's like, Austin, it's just not efficient. How do we? And so I kept pushing him on it and hounding him on it, and really I think it's a good way for him to kind of do something different in the industry. And the 10-year-old was for him, not for me. I mean, ultimately. So he calls me like, I don't know, I think it was a year and a half. He goes, I think I figured it out. He says, these mama cows that are being bred back every year, the way the cattle business works is the mama cow has a calf. Mm-hmm. The calf's on mama on grass for 6 months, and then that mama gets separated. They wing them, and then that calf has enough muscle structure to be a breeder or not. Mm-hmm. regardless if it's a bull or a cow or what that program needs, and then that calf gets sent to a feedlot. Mama bear stays on the pasture and is typically already pregnant with that next one, and so she's giving back, right? Giving back. Well, they keep her on pasture until she doesn't breed back anymore. They give her two chances. Just so happens Akaushi kind of averages 8 to 12 years. So he says, what if we do a breed back cow? And I'm like, okay. And he's like, we'll take it after 9 years of grass, and we'll send it to the feedlot for 6 months just to get a little corn in the diet, and we'll harvest that. Well, what I didn't know at the time is that USDA will only grade a cow that's younger than 2.5 years. So they will grade it fit for consumption, but they will not put a marbling score on it. So these ranchers have no value in a breed back cow. Sure. They go to cow harvest plants. There's a feedlot plants that harvest cows, and there's cow plants that harvest cows, right? So all these mama cows are going to these cow kill plants, and they're becoming no-roll beef. And they grind the whole animal. Well, that's a real good way to highlight mom who's put back all this effort. And we talk about, the next generation caring about where their food comes from and care about how the animals are raised. Well, so I said, Jordan, this is genius. I mean, look, you not only have an older animal, you have a poetic story that we can tell at the table that guests are going to really cling to. Right. So we fed one out, and we tried it, and I said, look, this is something. Not only is this a story, this is really good. Now, we had to play with aging a lot. You can't age a 10-year-old cow the same way you age a 2-year-old cow. So after trial and error in 4 cows, we've developed rail aging and wet aging the animal for a specific amount of time. And the 10-year-old I have at work right now, it's just a smoke show. I mean, we do a side-by-side tasting of 2-year-old Akaushi, 10-year-old Akaushi, and a 100-day dry-age 2-year-old. And you get 2.5 ounces of each on the plate. And we sold, I think, 30 orders this weekend, all weekend, 2 nights, and everybody picked a 10-year-old.
Really?
And which is unbelievable because it's no-roll beef,
right? Yeah.
Equivalently, right? I mean, it's so it's creating value for the rancher. Hopefully, I think it's going to really take off. You're already seeing Vaca Vieja do it in California. I think Jordan's the first one to do it with a Wagyu animal. And what's so great about that is that cow already slowly intermuscular marbles very slowly as it's fed out on grass. So what you end up getting is real flaky intermuscular marbling instead of big veiny fat.
Okay.
And it just punches you in the face with beef flavor. So you get, I like dry age that's beefy, that you get nutty caramel popcorn notes out of it, because I want to highlight what the animal ate.
Right.
Imparting mold into dry age that makes it taste like blue cheese or foie gras or all these things, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but personally, if I want blue cheese on a steak, I'll put blue cheese on a steak.
Right.
All right, so
seems basic.
I don't know why we're trying to impart that into an animal. From a mold growth standpoint, we should be highlighting that animal's purity and what it ate and what we fed that animal. That's what we want it to taste like. You take a venison and you feed it on a blueberry farm and you eat that meat. It tastes a whole lot different than one that's fed out on grass in South Texas. Yeah. And I've seen that firsthand. So you get that beefy flavor out of this 10-year-old without any mold impartation whatsoever, and you still have a wet age steak, which a lot of people like because it has a good moisture content. What people don't like about dry age is oftentimes it's not done very well, and it's very gamey, and it's dry, which you're dehydrating the water. So that's essentially what you're there. So I think it has crazy amount of legs. I think you're going to start seeing a lot of people do it. I think you're going to see some media get on. It was really hard for us to sell. The media just didn't. They didn't
grasp the concept.
I think they couldn't quite grasp what the whole story and what it meant to the industry. It's giving back to the customer by giving back to the rancher. There's an evolution there that's really hard to explain if you don't care to understand the meat business.
Yeah.
And that cow that lives on that pasture 9 years is living a hell of a lot better life than that one in the feedlot.
Yeah.
Not that the ones in the feedlot are living bad lives, but mama cow is pretty stress free. you know.
I think that's awesome, and the fact too that when Will was talking about it, he said I could put all of that in front of a customer and they may not give a damn, but they love the end product, and if the end product is freaking phenomenal, and like you said, people are choosing it hand over foot over anything else. It's just one of those where like eventually it'll catch on simply because it tastes freaking phenomenal.
Yeah, we call William a brisket whisperer. There's nobody that cooks brisket like that guy. We were talking last week, and he's just talking about brisket, and I'm so curious about smoked meats. I mean, I probably annoy the shit out of him with the amount of questions I ask. Not because I want to be like him in smoking meats, but just because I'm intrigued by it. Mm-hmm. And he got off. He says, I can smoke a brisket in a toilet bowl. You give me a fire to match it, you give me an empty toilet, and I can smoke a brisket. But it's because I've got so much experience in understanding what that piece of meat looks like in the process. And I just have so much respect for what those guys do. I mean, if you really run an offset, and I'm not talking about wrapping and breaking the time down and using charcoal, like run an offset with wood. Leave the meat unwrapped and smoke that thing for 14 hours or whatever it takes because of how big that meat is, and have the stress of actually caring about what you put out. I mean,
it's a science, man.
It's a chef. Pit masters are just as much cooks as chefs are, and I think that's interesting how the industry right now they're starting to change it, but I mean, look, I've taught a lot of guys how to do a lot of things in this industry, culinary-wise. Smoking a brisket's been one of the hardest things I've ever done to get it to the level that, I mean, Will's brisket changed my life. I have never been able to get mine to taste like his. So, I haven't done near as many, obviously.
So game on?
No. I'll leave the brisket smoking to Will.
I mean, as competitive as you are, right? And just talking with you
extremely.
For an hour. Yeah. Do you see that as an avenue that you would be interested in pursuing?
I smoke a lot of meats myself, but I tend to do like ribs, beef ribs. Brisket's the unicorn for me, and it's because I'm a flap guy. The point's great, but a really good flap is, in my opinion, where it's at. I don't eat a lot of fat in my. I try not to eat a ton of it, and it's not that I don't like it. I just, if you dry out the flap and the point's good, big deal. Yeah. I mean, and I think so. I do a lot of beef rib smoking a lot for events. I mean, I use Will's kind enough to let me use his pit all the time. I mean, I do 4 or 5 barbecue events a year, but in order to get to Will's level, you need to cook thousands of briskets. Mm-hmm. And I'm just not that ate up with it. I am, but I'm not. And I definitely think elements of smoke is in my near future, for sure. I don't know if I'll be doing the smoking, but
you'll be in the game.
But I'll be in the game. What Asian flavors that I like to use when you put them with smoked meats, it's a if you know how to do it till it's subtle. A lot of guys are overdoing it, in my opinion. But if you know how to do it where it's subtle and you can really highlight that animal and that smoke when you have the right smoke, it's. Me and Will have created some bites of food that I dream about. I've been very fortunate to go all over the world and eat very high-end tasting menus at really nice restaurants. I mean, when I went to France last year, we ate 13 tastings in 16 days, all in 2-star Michelins. I mean, God has blessed me with that. I've eaten some really damn good food. But some of the stuff me and Will's turned out has just stopped me in my shoes, and I'm just like, man, Will's been doing it, I don't know, 7 years. I think I've been doing it since I was 18. There's very few times that I've just stopped and go, God bless, because of what that happens when those flavors come together. It's something very different. So
they're incredible.
This has been incredible. Yeah. This whole conversation, I really appreciate you opening up so much. And I mean, we talked some about the food, but kind of like most of our podcasts, this is life lessons and, things about food, but not necessarily your menu, all that much, which is really freaking cool.
We didn't bring up how popular he is, all his accolades and awards.
Nah, come on, man. It's not important. Come meet the team at TRIS and that'll be where you'll really appreciate it, I think. But I'm still very matter of fact about cooking. Mm-hmm. It's got to be the same way every time. I mean, that's another thing I love about Will. I mean, he's a king of consistency with barbecue. I mean, you can argue whether he's the best barbecue restaurant. In my mind, he is, not just because I think he smokes the best brisket, but because he is the king of consistency. If I come one day and it's great, and I come the next day and it's not good, you're a shit leader. And that, in my sense, is what I love about Will and what he's done, is that it's the same way every time. I'm the same way. So my cooks know that we're there to create an expectation. But they know at the end of the day, I'll swim the ocean for them.
Well, I'm just so glad we caught you at 32 on our podcast, because I mean, just hearing all of this and being able to talk so candidly with you, the future just looks so fucking bright.
Well,
like,
I appreciate
it's
it,
just
man. Thank you so much. It
absolutely
means a lot.
incredible. Well, it's awesome to hear this from, because I'll always say, like, our first podcast and the relationship that I've developed with Ara over at Harlem Road Barbecue, a guy who worked under the number 2 of Wolfgang Puck, you know, and just a wealth of knowledge. It's kind of cool to be able to bounce questions and ideas and have that conversation with someone who's probably in the beginnings of that next huge step in his career. And I really do see that's going to be a lot of fun to see. But seriously, this has been absolutely awesome, and I know we've gone long and taken up a shit ton of your time.
No, I could talk all night, man. I enjoy it. Thank you. Thank you for
great.
giving me an avenue to tell my story.
Sure.
So, that means a lot to me, because sometimes we don't always get to say what we want to say. Get back in the kitchen and cook some more.
Well, you're welcome anytime, and we promise we'll have Will back on. You guys.
So we should get Will on and do it together, huh?
Yeah, we'll do something. Well, we're gonna do like a TV series between you two, because the stuff that you've put out and the reception that you two have had, it is really cool to see two minds like that and two completely different journeys into the culinary world and into restaurant management and into those spaces. One that starts with kind of the traditional path of going to school and so forth, and Will kind of just freaking learning hard knocks.
Busting ass.
And for both of you to stand up there and say, I learned so much from him, and he learned, and he says the exact same things.
Something about Will that most people don't talk about. I mean, how about this dude opening a small trailer?
Yeah.
Having a cush, well, I don't know how cush it was, but it was a decent job. He was supporting his family.
Yeah.
Spinning it all around and going and sleeping in that trailer and stoking an offset. And his first pit wasn't glamorous. Right? Like, who does that? I mean, look, I have worked many 100-hour weeks in my career. I have pushed myself to the brink, but I've never laid my head down in a friggin' trailer and got up every 30 minutes and stoked a fire so that my customer could have a consistent product. I mean, you talk about the American dream. That man made it for himself. And he had a good woman behind him.
Yeah.
But I mean, come on, I mean, I think that it will tell you that he started this industry because it was an excuse to drink beer.
Empty can. What do you say?
Empty beer cans. And that probably is why he started smoking meats. But that shouldn't be what he's remembered for. Will should be remembered for the fact that he did something that most people in America just aren't willing to do, and turn it into a really good business for his family. And I mean, if you don't respect that, then I don't really know,
Before we quit, tell us where TRIS is located.
TRIS is located at 24 Waterway in the Woodlands, right across from the movie theater.
Okay.
Curates inside of TRIS.
Yeah.
And the kitchen's located on Research Forest in Gosling.
It's about a 9-minute drive.
If that,
from
depending
TRIS.
on traffic.
And social media, how they keep up with you guys on social media?
Dine, Sip, Taste is the hashtag for TRIS. TRIS is on, TRIS Woodlands is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Mine is Chef Austin Simmons on Instagram and Facebook. And Dine the Kitchen is the tag for the kitchen.
Any shout outs, any close outs? Anybody you want to say hello to? Your mom, your stepmom?
Well, of course, my family, mom, stepmom, that's great.
Always been very supportive through your career.
Yeah.
Good.
Always, mom and both. I'm blessed to have 4 parents, which my daughter is now blessed to have 4 grandparents. I think they've really supported me through it, and my wife, can't say enough good things about her. She sits at home and raises that little girl while I work hard every night, and it's a hard job. She's got her hands full. So thank you, sweetheart, for all that you do.
Well, throughout the podcast too, you've constantly mentioned team members and guys that are part of the organization. So that's really, really cool to hear, because it's not, like you said, it's not about you. This has been an absolute wonderful podcast. Absolutely. I mean, we're going on part 3 is at 53 minutes right now, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Thank you, guys.
I wish you nothing but the best of luck. I don't think you need it. I don't think, just remember us as you grow, please.
Nah,
just
come on,
a
I'll
little
be
bit,
here.
man.
I'll be
'cause,
here.
man,
We'll drink beer and
Talk
run
shop,
around a
man.
barbecue pit or something.
Hell
Sounds
yeah.
good to me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to Duke's Premium Meats for sponsoring the podcast. Thank you for Beavers for hosting us and giving us a great space for our guests. Thank you to all of our listeners. We'll be back next week with another one. Thank you once again, Chef Austin, for coming on and spending so much time.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Houston, for all the support in the Woodlands.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Tune in, like, and subscribe.
The Woodlands is Houston, by the way. It's not South Dallas, I assure you.
Can we do the same thing for Katy, or is Katy too far?
I'm not worried about Katy. I'm not there.
Woodlands is well worth a drive.
Yeah.
We need to say.
It is
Absolutely.
North Houston.
Yeah, definitely.
Go get the experience at TRIS. Go try all of those different